The Nest by Shawn. This story takes place 27 years after the First Corporate War. Prelude. The Mannix Corporation armored truck approached the checkpoint, but there wasn't a soul in sight. The two security officers inside the truck assumed the soldiers on checkpoint duty were staying inside their guard shack, trying their best to avoid the midday summer sun. The driver geared down and the prisoner transport came to a gentle stop 15 meters from the checkpoint. After a few seconds, the driver blasted the horn. Every other time a horn was honked at one of these highway checkpoints, visibly annoyed soldiers would come out of the guard shack within seconds. Yet over half a minute passed with no one to be seen.
"Blast the horn again,"
the lieutenant grunted to the driver, hiding his unease with a show of ill-tempered authority. The driver did as he was told and gave the mighty horn another tug. Still, no one came out of the guard shack. The driver remained silent as the lieutenant unholstered his sidearm. The lieutenant looked at the mirror on his side of the truck and said,
"Radio the boys up in Border Town. Tell them there's a problem at Checkpoint 4.
Before the driver could acknowledge his orders, the lieutenant quickly opened his door, slipped out of the truck and just as quickly closed the door behind him. The lieutenant held his sidearm ahead of him as he crouched next to the idling truck, mentally preparing himself to sprint the short distance to the guard shack. The low rumble of the engine somehow comforted the lieutenant, and he took a deep breath. The lieutenant, still in his 20s, covered the distance in just over 2 seconds before crouching near the door of the guard shack. The lieutenant took a series of short breaths to prep himself, and looked down as if to make sure he was still holding his sidearm.
"No excuses,"
the lieutenant heard himself say in the back of his mind before getting up, pivoting his body and aiming his gun through the open door of the shack. It took the lieutenant a half-second to adjust his eyes to the dark interior, but he could soon make out the 3 dead bodies of the checkpoint guards. They'd been sprayed with bullets while playing poker, their rifles just within reach along the rack. The lieutenant figured the guards had been killed recently. Despite the midsummer heat, the 3 bodies hadn't started to stink. That meant whoever killed them was still nearby. Before the lieutenant could think any further, he felt the cold tip of a submachine gun's barrel pressing against the back of his neck.
I repeat, we got trouble up at Checkpoint 4. No sign of the guards. Best send some help. Over.
The driver shouted into the radio, but knew it'd be a slim chance he'd get any response. Radio communication in this part of the mountains was patchy at best, and they hadn't been issued a sat phone when they left Border Town. The driver raised his eyes from the silent radio to quickly scan the mirrors and look out the windshield. The driver's heart sank at the sight of the lieutenant standing a dozen meters ahead of the armored truck, his hands above his head and an armed madman standing behind him. Toby kept the tip of his submachine gun pressed against the back of the lieutenant's head as he carefully peeked around his human shield.
"Shut the engine off and get out of the truck,"
Toby shouted. Toby and the startled driver could see each other through the windshield's transparent armor, sharing cold eye contact for several seconds. Toby repeated his demands and the driver just stared back like a deer caught in the glare of high-beam headlights. This suited Mouse just fine. With the driver staring at his colleague held hostage in front of him, Mouse could now safely get out of her hiding hole along the side of the road and sneak up to the back of the idling truck.
About goddamn time.
After all, it was like an oven under the stealth tarp and she must have lost half a pound just in sweat. As Mouse confidently walked to the back of the truck, she eyeballed the keypad and latch mechanism on the door. Recognizing the lock as a Maxwell Model 49, Mouse knew their intel had been on the money. Mouse reached into her backpack and pulled out what looked like a tin soup can with a blinking red light on one end. She then placed the can just above the lock. A magnetic bottom kept the soup can against the rear door of the truck, as the blinking light along the other end became a solid glow. This gave Mouse time to lay flat on the ground just behind the truck and cover her ears. The driver heard the small explosion at the back of the truck and felt the vehicle rock slightly. This was enough to snap him out of his shock, and he heard the gunman make his demands one last time.
Shut the engine off and get out of the truck. Do it now or I blow this fucker's head off.
Toby yelled as he kept pressing the end of his submachine gun against the back of the lieutenant's head. Toby had been counting the seconds since he'd heard the explosion at the back of the truck. Taking one last peek around his human shield, Toby figured Mouse had to have gotten the boss out by now. The gunman grinned sadistically at the driver and pulled the trigger. With the unmistakable of a 3-round burst, the driver witnessed the lieutenant's head come apart in a mix of bloody chunks and red mist. The psycho gunman kept grinning as he let the body drop to the ground in front of him. What Toby didn't realize was that the driver was out of his trance and was now more alert than ever. Without a second thought, the driver quickly put the truck in gear and stomped down on the accelerator. Toby's grin disappeared as he watched the heavy vehicle lurch forward and quickly bear down on him. Toby tried running back toward the guard shack, but it was too late. He was crushed between the truck's ram bar and the cinderblock wall of the shack. The truck continued to accelerate as it plowed through the small, toolshed-like building. The driver's next move would be to speed on to Iron Horse as fast as possible. So, he steered the truck back onto the road and away from the remains of the checkpoint. The driver only made it 50 meters down the road before the second, coffee can-sized bomb Mouse had left inside the rear of the truck went off. Back near the destroyed guard shack, Mouse and the boss could feel the heat from the explosion down the road. The two had managed to jump out the open rear of the truck just as it began moving forward. Mouse, already drenched in sweat, ignored the extra heat as she undid the boss's handcuffs.
Good girl, Mouse.
Danny Blue said to the little bomb maker as she freed his hands.
I knew you'd get me out.
Danny Blue rubbed his wrists as he looked around him and breathed in the air, glad to finally be free again. The leader of the Young Revolutionaries had just slipped the noose, and he had a lot of plans. Not only the leader of the Young Revolutionaries, Danny Blue was the face of their cause, their frontman. Danny was tall, fit, and gifted with movie star good looks to go along with the charisma of a used car salesman. His entire life, up until his capture the year before, Danny Blue rode his charm and throve on his popularity. When he made eye contact and spoke to someone, he always made them feel accepted and appreciated. This was Danny's gift as it allowed him to win over almost anyone and get them to happily go along with whatever he said. With a combination of his welcoming smile, unbreakable eye contact, and a careful stroking of his subjects' egos, Danny Blue was a master of social engineering who could put Dale Carnegie to shame. Even while locked up, Danny Blue was a social magnet, and he never had trouble finding followers among the other prisoners, some of the prison staff, and even a few guards. Homely female guards for the most part.
Damn.
Mouse thought to herself.
Other than losing some weight, the son of a bitch still looks good, even in a prison uniform.
Mouse felt a flash of shame, and resented that she was still attracted to Danny Blue. The little bomb maker reminded herself she wasn't here for him. She was here for the good of the cause. Danny Blue wasn't just a pretty face with a silver tongue. He was also a brilliant tactician who'd planned the successful kidnappings of several members of the Industrial Territories elite over a 4-year period. Each snatch was carried out with military precision by young revolutionaries eager to please their leader. What stunned both authorities and the public was how each victim was taken from deep within the Industrial Territories, north of the Gateway. This was unthinkable at the time, as everything north of the gateway was believed the safest place on the continent. The ransoms netted the young revolutionaries millions, and inspired countless angry young people to join the fight against the industrial exploiters. This not only made Danny Blue rich and famous, it also put a hefty price on his head. After all, he was just on his way up to Gateway City for public execution. Had it not been for Mouse and Toby, Danny Blue would have kept his date with the gallows.
Feels good to be free again.
Danny Blue said aloud to no one in particular. Danny Blue looked down at the skinny little bomb maker next to him, and flashed her one of his $1 million smiles.
Love the fireworks, Mouse. But we still need a set of wheels,
he said. Mouse pointed to the tree line 100 meters off the road.
We got us a truck stashed behind them trees, boss.
To avoid eye contact with Danny, Mouse glanced over at what was left of the guard shack, including Toby's lifeless body. Mouse wasn't bothered by the trigger-happy psycho's death. Toby took pleasure in killing, and he died like he deserved. Mouse didn't really feel anything other than the heat and her leader's eyes slowly moving over her body.
We'd best get moving,
Mouse said. Mouse and Danny Blue jogged quickly across the open ground to the shade of the trees. From somewhere within the brush, Bobby shouted,
Is it safe to come out now?
It ain't getting any safer, dipshit.
Mouse barked back.
Just get out here already.
Mouse and Danny Blue heard the roar of a big block V8 coming to life. A few seconds later, the mighty 4x4 SUV slowly moved forward and out from the undergrowth, pushing over brush, dense shrubs and saplings along the way. Once Bobby's big blue machine was free of the tree line, Danny and Mouse jumped in. Mouse wanted nothing more than a shower to wash away the last few hours' worth of sweat and grime, but knew it'd be at least another 24 hours before she could enjoy such a luxury.
Hell,
Mouse thought to herself.
Bobby brought plenty of drinking water, and I can always use a washcloth when the boss ain't looking.
Bobby put the full-sized SUV in gear and drove across the open ground and onto the empty road. Bobby was loyal to the young revolutionary cause, and he would never dare question any of Danny Blue's orders, but he secretly wished the boss would change his mind about their escape route.
Don't pussy out on the go pedal, Bobby,
Danny Blue said with a smile to his chauffeur.
Floor it.
Bobby did as he was told, and the SUV lurched forward with expected kickdown. A few clicks down a ways and Bobby veered onto Service Trail 99. Soon, the three terrorists found themselves out on the back roads, speeding toward the dreaded C-Zone. Late in the First Corporate War, a general tasked with defending a 3-city-wide front went insane and detonated a cobalt bomb. Luckily, the explosion was contained, and most of the radiation plume was limited to the Tri-City area, as well as a 100-kilometer surrounding radius. This massive exclusion zone is now called the C-Zone and is expected to remain highly radioactive for well over a century. Assuming someone wears protective equipment and remains within sheltered areas, basements, shielded vehicles, etc., the maximum amount of time a person can remain within the C-Zone is 50 minutes to an hour. Any longer would cause irreversible cellular damage and bring about an agonizing death.